hello everyone, and welcome to the slightly delayed session of IGDC 2020. And as you all know, I want to introduce you guys to Anshul, Soni. Let me start recording this. The last time I forgot to record it. Let me make sure that I don't forget to record. Give me a second. All right, I'm recording the session. All right. So once again, Anshul is my oldest student from Backstage Pass. He was with me in 2012, and he's one of my brightest students. And now Anshul is living the dream in the US as a programmer with Electronic Arts. And we've already kind of lost a bit of time, so I'm going to let Anshul take it from here. And we'll try and keep about 10 minutes, the last 10 minutes, for question and answers. And to be honest, we don't have a panel after this. So I think it's okay to kind of go beyond. So guys, here's Anshul.
Hey everyone, let me just start sharing. Yes, can you see my screen? Cool. So yeah, so my talk is basically about how I broke into the game industry. I'll go into more details, but let me first briefly just introduce myself. I did my BTech in computer science and game development from Backstage Pass School of Gaming back in Hyderabad. While I was there, I interned at EA in Hyderabad. And right after, I moved to join DigiPen, and I did my MS in computer science from DigiPen Institute of Technology. Straight out of the college, I started working at Sanzaru Games as a gameplay engineer, which is an Oculus studio, but I worked on multiple games with Sanzaru. I worked on Asgard's Wrath, I worked on Marvel Powers United VR, I worked on Spyro Reignited Trilogy for PS4 and Xbox. And after that, I've been with EA again for about 2.5 years now. And in those years, I've worked on multiple games with EA. I've worked on Apex, I've worked on Star Wars, Anthem, FIFA, and Plant vs. Zombies, and some others. So, yeah. But let's jump right into it. So basically, I just want to talk about what this talk exactly is about, because this talk, I feel it's important because this is not about what's right or what's wrong. And the reason I want to highlight this is because there are multiple ways to get into game industry, and everyone has a different path and opinion about it. And basically your path would depend on your focus area, what you want from game industry, what you want to do in here. And this talk is more about what worked for me. And the reason that's important is because I'm a programmer. So this is not really going into detail about design or art. I really do interact with those people on day-to-day basis, but I'm not either of those to go into detail with those. So yeah, let's get started. And so questions, not for you asking questions, but there are some questions I've been asked time to time on LinkedIn, Quora, or my other social media, and I figured out some of these are pretty common and I have answered them multiple times. So I thought I'll take those out and give my broad view on those questions. One of the very common questions I get a lot is, should I go to college for game development? So I'm going to talk about should you, why should you, and what you should get out of college if you go to study game development. Other thing I get asked a lot about is, what should I study? This mainly is important because some people don't go to game college but still do want to end up in game industry. So I would like to cover some of those topics that you should be studying that will help you break into the game industry. And last but the most important, how to get an interview. Because getting interview with AAA studios can be hard at times, but I'll just explain you what are the things you can do to make your chances better to get that interview. So let's jump right into some of the questions. So very first question was, should I go to college for game development? And yes. You should go to college for game development. And I feel like there is better ways to ask this question because someone who's trying to study something else or trying to break into other field, they don't ask if they should be going to college for that. They basically mostly ask what college they should go to, and that's exactly what you should be asking for game development as well. Because unlike any other field, when you enter into game industry, people know about some colleges. You will meet some people who are from these colleges, and within the industry these colleges are famous because they do some things right and everyone knows about it, so it increases your chances to get hired into game industry. And that's not because of the college itself, but it's more because of what they teach. So let's get into picking a college. I get this question a lot. I get asked about how should I pick the college, what should I think about, and so I'll try to cover some of the things that I use to pick a college. Um, so one of the most important thing is the subjects they teach. So this is important because colleges which teach game development are still pretty new. Not every college has the same curriculum. There's definitely some clash, and a lot of what they teach is common. But what's important is the not so common stuff. The things which are different in these colleges, which doesn't overlap, because these things are focused on some specific areas and are taught by experts. So not every college has experts for every subject. So what's important is when you are picking a college, you go into their curriculum, figure out the subjects that you want to study, and see their descriptions and figure out if they align with what you want to do in your game career. And if you don't know about that subject, it's the right time for you to basically just read the description, go online, find out what it exactly teaches you. Obviously, or if you knew it already, you wouldn't be researching about it. But it's important because when you look into these subjects, one thing that you will find is the faculty who's teaching them. And you want to go through this because when I mentioned this already, that the game colleges hire these people who are expert into these in these subjects, and they are not always full-time teaching. They are still working in the industry and they are teaching. Rahul, who just introduced me, is one of the examples. He works in the game industry. He's a teacher, and I've had that happen in Digipen as well. So some of the people who who taught me were Steve Rabin, who's a writer for AI Jams. He's a programmer at Nintendo. He's been there for about 20 years now. Another person who taught me was Scott Rudy, who's a director at Psyonix, the studio which made Rocket League. And he was also not a full-time programmer. But what's important is these people are teaching something which they are expert in. And that's important because you want to be selecting your concentration area when picking these colleges. Of course, you're studying everything, but that's not what gets you in the door in game industry. Being specialized in a field does. And with your research, you're going to figure out if the concentration you want to get into is being taught by an expert at that particular college. not every college is going to have expert in each subject. So basically, like when I was trying to figure out, I wanted to study physics. So for me, it was important to find the college which has the best track for physics programming. And that's how I picked the college. Some people come to me and ask about graphics programming. There are colleges which are famous for graphics programming. They came up with some of the algorithms that are used in graphics programming day to day. So if you're into graphics programming, that's where you would want to go. And yeah, so after you pick the college, you get into the college, you expect a lot of things. I'm just going to go over one of the most important things that you should not expect. Making a game in your first semester. It's not going to happen. You just entered college. You don't even know programming. So don't expect, having a game in your first semester. But second semester, still a no. There's a lot that goes into game development, and you need to learn those basics of computer science before you actually get into the game development itself. If you ask any programmer who's into game development starts after computer science. So if you think that you can learn everything that's required in first few semester, that's not going to happen. Third semester, still not. You can start thinking about it, but you are not really going to have a game by end of the third semester. Then the reason I'm trying to point this out is because when people expect this, they are not really focusing on what's important in these semesters, which is the basic stuff, the basics of computer science, the basics of programming, the basic math, physics, and everything else that you will need when you actually start making your game. So let's go into more details in what did I learn in college. So the usual stuff, this is more or less the stuff which you will learn in any computer science college, but it's still very important because I will keep on mentioning this. Game development is computer science in terms of programming. So data structures and algorithms, one of the most important things. It's your toolkit. As a programmer, you want to know everything about this. This will not only help you become a better programmer, this will help you in your interviews. It's the core of computer science. So you don't want to skip on this. You want to really focus on your data structures and algorithms. Math, very important as a gameplay programmer, AI programmer, graphics programmer, sound engineer, writing new mechanics, everything is math. As a game developer, you'll be using more math than anything else you will ever do. Even when you're writing code, I think there's more math involved than code itself. So you really want to focus on this and don't want to skimp on it. Then comes physics. Physics becomes really important for game mechanics and general gameplay programming. You don't really have to go in a lot of details with physics unless you're trying to be a physics programmer, but you still need to know 3D vectors and all the basic stuff that's taught, which will really come in handy in your day-to-day programming job. And last but not the least, the C++. It's really the most important. If the college you're trying to go to does not teach C++, just don't. There's no other way to put this, but C++ is the language you need to get your foot into the game industry. So if they are not teaching C++, don't go for it unless you are going to learn it on your own, which is pretty difficult. C++ is not an easy language. Even professionals don't know everything about C++. So, but yeah, that's the usual stuff. Other very common thing that I've seen on curriculum in computer science college is graphics programming. this might not be as important if you don't plan to be a graphics programmer, but you still need basic understanding of how shader works. It's also pretty common to ask about graphics pipeline in game interviews. So yeah, this also seems like one of the important but usual things that you would learn in college. But let's skip on to what's the not so usual that I learned in college, some of which was part of the curriculum, some of which I had to pick in because of how the curriculum was designed. So, artificial intelligence for games. This is really, really important because uh, this will teach you stuff that you're definitely going to be using a lot. Stuff like pathfinding, behavior trees, enemy behavior, and these are some very common things that you work on as a gameplay engineer, or you know, even if you just are working on AI, these are important. And gameplay engineer is more or less gonna be your first title when you try to enter the industry. So that's why this is one of the most important things to focus on. To go into more details, making frameworks from scratch. Now, this was not really part of the curriculum, but this came out as a result of the school not allowing us to use any pre-built frameworks. So I ended up writing a very basic framework that could render, that could read and write to files, and I ended up using it across multiple projects. But this will teach you how to write scalable code, which is very important skill to have for game industry. So that makes it really important. Next is game design. Now, uh, even as a programmer, I can't stress enough how important it is to know game design, because you'll be working with designer on a regular basis, and getting ideas across is not an easy task. You'll talk to the designer will tell you something, he'll try to describe it, he has something in his mind which he'll try to explain to you. You will listen to him and you will make up something in your mind that you're going to program. This translation from their mind to your mind is never going to be 1:1. But if you understand basics of game design, it's gonna be at least close to it, and that will make your job a lot easier, because you will not be throwing away so much code, because you will be getting closer to what they wanted and less throwaway work. uh, Again, I said I'm not a designer, so I'm not going to go into too much details about what designers should do, but I do want to point out that if you are a designer, it's very important to know basics of programming, because it goes both ways. You want to be able to come up with designs that are programmatically possible, and that's only feasible if you actually know programming, and you'll be able to explain the programmer you're working with what you actually want. And as a programmer, I think I've had most fun working with designers who know programming versus who don't. So that's why I feel that this is one of the most important things between those two different fields. Level design, kind of the same. That it will help you make better designs. It will help you understand enemy behaviors easily and program those easily. This also is usually part of most of the game design schools. So you really, really want to focus on this and get. This will help you get your design across. So the next one is engine architecture. I've seen this as part of curriculum for most of the game colleges, and this is important because when you're working in game industry, at least AAA, you will definitely be jumping into engine code at some point. And if you don't know the architecture, you will have trouble debugging the issues, or jumping into that code. So that's one of the reason engine architecture is really important. I'm actually going to go into more details about this in my next slide. So Making a game engine from scratch, very controversial claim I'm making, because this is something that people talk about a lot. That why do you want to write a game engine? But I'll get to that. Uh, so here, the this is very common thing to talk about. A lot of people say, why reinvent the wheel? Game engine is already made. There's no reason you should be writing a game engine. Uh, I beg to differ. I have worked on multiple engines. By multiple, I mean three. I've written three different game engines during my college and my projects. And I think it is one of the most important thing to do as a programmer. Uh, First of all, you are not reinventing the wheel. The wheel is already invented. You are building it. You are looking into the instructions of building that wheel. You are reading about architecture. So that it writing a game engine just makes you a better programmer in general. I've been asked this about programming, that hey, what kind of project should I pick up to be a better programmer? And even if you're not a game developer, I say game engine because it teaches you so much more than anything any other project ever will. So basically, makes you a better programmer in general. Now, the reason you are not actually building a wheel and you are not actually reinventing the engine and just building something after reading a lot of things is because it's already done. There are so many architectures that have been widely used, well thought out. There are engines already out there which are using these architectures. If you were to actually come up with a new architecture for by yourself, this is not the talk for you. Someone has a job ready for you, go get it. But yeah, that's why it shouldn't be called reinventing the wheel. It should just be called rebuilding it. And so other than making you a better programmer in general, it will help you improve your debugging skills. So the reason this is going to happen is because your engine is big. There's so many multiple systems interacting with each other. There's so much going on in there that when an issue comes in, you will have to dig deeper. You will have to understand more about debugging, figure out those small issues that you never dealt with before. And it goes really long way. Like debugging is something as a programmer that you never could learn enough of. There's so much more. There's so much deeper you can go into the code. And this is what it helps you in. And that's why I feel it's one of the important things. And I guess I already talked about this. Because you're building something which has different architecture, you're going to read about multiple architectures. You're going to figure out which architecture suits your requirement. And then, you will learn about different of those. And it will actually help you in your interviews for system design, because system design is a really common question in most of the interviews. And other thing is you will interact with a lot of third-party libraries. Even though I say building the engine from scratch, you're not writing everything from scratch. An engine has so many different systems that if you were to write everything from scratch, it will take you by yourself a decade probably. But what you're doing is you're building some systems, you're using some third-party systems, and you're integrating them together. You are definitely writing the core of your engine. And when you are using these third-party systems, you will get to learn about how to read documentation from third party. You will understand how to use libraries which you have never used before, interact with larger code bases. So basically that helps you understand how to go through large code bases and familiarize yourself with those. And the thing that happens with a game engine is you'll have so many bugs that you will have to interact with a lot of people and learn a lot of things, that you will be networking with a lot of people. This happened a lot when I was working on the engine, because I come across new issues which I have never heard of or I have never dealt with. So I'll be talking to people, because not everything could be found online. So you're going to your teachers, you're going to your seniors and figuring out these issues. And it just helps you understand their perspective on engine. Helps you understand what else could go into these engines. And the one of the most important things you'll learn with making these engines is memory management. And as a game developer, memory management is gonna go a long way, because that's one of the most important things when you're actually writing games. Memory is very crucial, and you will learn about uh, you know limiting your frame rate, because everyone knows that there are only so many frames you are allowed to use to do your calculations. So that's why I keep on saying that uh, keep on building your engines. Your engine is not going to be good. It's never going to be good enough to actually build a shippable game. If you just want to make a game, we already have engines, use those. But this should be used for learning purposes, but still make a fun game out of it. Make whatever you can. Just don't expect it to be AAA quality, or don't even expect it to be too good. And it's the truth, because as I said, I've worked on 3 different engines, and even my last one was decent, but not a good engine. Like, I would not use it again to write a game. So it's use it as a learning process. Now, college teaches you a lot of stuff, but self learning is very important. I learned a lot of things when I was at Backstage Pass by myself, and they came in handy. So let me just go over some of the things that I learned, and I'll explain where they came in handy or why I felt those were important. So, Unity. Uh, I learned this, I started learning this probably in my 4th or 5th semester. This helped me in a lot of game jams, this helped me in freelancing projects. But most important thing that Unity helped me was in understanding what a game engine actually is, because I did not work on a game engine before I used one, and that's actually a bad idea. You should not just start working on an engine if you have not used one. Your design is going to be bad, your architecture is going to be bad, because you don't really know what a game engine is like. I actually have a real world example of this, but I'll go over it if we get time, because I see we are short on time. Uh, Unity helped me a lot in my freelancing projects, which I did after my bachelor's. I made some iOS and Android games. They were launched, so it was really helpful. I taught myself Unreal. Unreal has helped me in most of my professional career. My first job was all Unreal. All the games that were shipped by Sanzaro were made in Unreal. And it also has helped me in just learning C++, because Unreal is open source. There's so much to learn from that engine, because the architecture is so well designed. You can go into the systems, read the code base, and basically just understand how a good engine works. So that's why Unreal has been helpful for me. Coco Studio, SFML, IMGUI. Basically, these are some things I used during my college. I haven't had a chance to use those in my professional career, except IMGUI actually has been such a big framework that it's now shipped with PS4, Xbox, and next gen consoles, PS5, XBSX, and I have used IMGUI in these consoles. So no one actually knew it's gonna be so big, but learning that came in real handy. One of the things that I learned by using these small third-party libraries was importance of documentation. which you will realize that when you come to industry, you are writing a lot of documentation, you are documenting your code, which you never are in college, because someone else is looking at your code as well. You're not the only person making changes to your code. So these things are important. And then one thing is that self-learning is just important, because in game industry, there's so much going on. Things changes so rapidly. A lot of frameworks come and go. Architecture changes. So you need to be learning all these stuff. No one is gonna keep on coming and teaching you these things. Now people keep on asking me, like, would you have done something different? Would you have not gone to college? And I always say that I would have still gone to college, because I can list out things that would have been very hard if I didn't go to college. So first thing is working in well-structured teams. When I say well-structured, the type of teams I worked in had designers, programmers, artists, producer. We had a sound designer, and even within programmers, we had a technical director, physics engineer, graphics programmer, and this was a student game team. So that's difficult to get without college. People would argue that, oh, I can go online and find people to, make games with, but that's really difficult. You will not find people of, all these different fields that you want. You won't be able to get a well-structured team, and no one will have any incentive to stay with you, because it's just a learning process. They will leave if they find something better or if they find a job. While you're in college, they won't, because they want good grades, so they will stick with their team. Another good part is when you're selecting this team, it's not about the teacher is not going to you and be like, hey, you are in this team. You are finding your own team. You have an idea, you pitch it to people, you share it out, and people like your idea, they join you. So you get this experience that you wouldn't otherwise. So that's one of the most important things that I got out of college. Dev kits, they are very difficult to obtain. It's almost impossible to obtain dev kits as a student. So this is something I got from college. I had access to Wii U dev kits, Nintendo, and I had access to Oculus dev kits, and I was actually able to do projects on those for my final year. And I wouldn't have been able to if it was not for college. Mentorship, you can definitely find this without college as well. But if you find mentorship through college, you will see that it's very structured. You will know what you're expecting. You will have a very definite path, and that's important. And last but not the least is exposure to game industry. There are other ways to get this, but when I say exposure to game industry, this is important because when you're in college, the companies are coming to your college, they are talking to you directly, and they are there to hire people. And that kind of exposure is difficult to get without college. You cannot just go online and, find someone and be like, hey, let's talk for 15 minutes because you're looking for someone. That's not going to happen because no one has that kind of time. So next, I just want to cover some of the projects I worked on, which definitely helped me have a good resume and, have better conversation with the recruiters or just in general, the people I met in game industry. So very early on, I worked on a lot of Android, iOS, and Windows projects using Unity, and they helped me learn the engine, and they helped me just understand game programming. And they helped me, put out that like, hey, I've worked on these multiple platforms instead of just having one single platform on my resume. I worked on Leap Motion Controller. I used this with like my other projects. It was still a student project, but still helped me. I talked to some of the people in Oculus about different ways of using controllers, and because I had this experience, I was able to, have a great conversation. I had my final project was on Oculus DK2. This was my student project, the final year project, and again, this basically helped me get my first job because I had experience with uh, working on an engine that was written for Oculus from scratch because we did not use Unreal. We used the Oculus SDK and wrote an engine for Oculus. So that was a big thing. And yeah, we use Razer Hydra with Oculus instead because there were no touch controllers at that point. So basically, just having different ways of interaction helped a lot. I worked on Level Editor. This was part of my game engine, but it was a separate tool. And this helped me a lot because I wanted to work on engine side with the level editors, and this showed that I'm passionate about it. My level editor was highly influenced by Unity. If you look at it, it almost just looks like Unity, just not as good of a UI because we use different renders, but it's almost like Unity. And physics engine. This was one of the most important projects that helped me talk to a lot of people, especially people from Naughty Dog. I had amazing conversations about a lot of physics because I had this experience. So these projects are important not only because they'll get you into the door, but also because when you work on multiple things, you will be able to talk to people and you'll be able to get the most out of them when you're talking to them. Because, if you just ask vague questions, you will get vague answers, and you don't want that. You want to be very specific, and that way you'll be able to learn more from whoever you talk to in game industry. Let's get to the main part. Everyone want to know more about AAA, so let's talk AAA. I'm just gonna go about what industry is like, how to land an interview, and what to expect from an interview. So, what the industry is like. Very welcoming and full of passion. I can tell you this, I have talked to so many people in game industry. Everyone is always happy to help. Everyone is always happy to talk and share more. As long as you're passionate about it, they are passionate about it. The biggest example is I met John Carmack 2 years ago back in Oculus Connect, and I talked to him for about 45 minutes. And that's not a small thing. John Carmack at that time was CTO of Oculus, and for a CTO of a company that big to engage in conversation for 45 minutes with someone is, it's not just like doesn't happen. So it was really shocking for me that that happened, and that's when I realized that hey, I can just go and talk to anyone in the game industry and they would love to talk. And it was an amazing conversation. We talked about Oculus, we talked about games, and we talked about some of the very older games that John Carmack himself worked on. And yeah, that was probably my best 45 minutes talking to anyone in game industry. Other important thing that is AAA is C++. If you're a programmer in game industry, C++ is everything. Everyone will tell you this. Even now, all the major game studios use C++. All the major engines are written in C++. It has always been this way. It's not going away anywhere anytime soon. Sure, there are some game studios which might be using other languages. Like people argue a lot about not using Java for Minecraft, but that's an exception. That's one game of AAA level that did not use C++. Most of the games use C++. If they are using Unity, they are using C++ because Unity is all written in C++. Competition is high. It's really high. especially because a lot of software developers want to be a game developer, so you just have to stand out. And that's all I've been talking about mostly. All of the things which I've been talking about help you stand out from a normal software developer and get you into game industry. And the most important thing, find an area to focus on. Don't just go and be like, hey, I'm a developer. I know a little bit of design. Know a little bit of programming, a little bit of physics, a little bit of graphics. That's not going to get you anywhere. Find something you want to do. And a lot of people mostly just talk about design, artists and programmers, but there's so much more to games these days. There's social media managers, there's esports manager, there's translators, and all these different fields have, can get you into game industry. And if you're interested in them, then you should learn more about them, and just try to focus on that one area instead of being a generalist. So now the very high, this question has been asked so many times. I've answered this question on Quora multiple times, how to land an interview in a AAA studio. Projects, do projects, as many of them as you can, show them in your resume, but make sure that you have a depth and breadth. Remember, these are important of expertise. With these, don't just have one kind of project that shows one of your skill. Have projects that shows that you are expert in something, but have projects that shows that you can do other stuff as well. So I have projects varying from physics, game engine to showing gameplay, and that way I'm able to talk about a lot of stuff and then go into detail in something that I'm really interested in, and that's gonna make you stand out from anyone who's just showing what they did in college. And these projects should not be just your college projects. These should be something that you worked on your free time with your friends, or for game jams, but have multiple projects, because you don't have anything before you get into game industry to put on your resume other than this. Other important thing, go online, learn about studios, figure out what they are looking for, figure out what kind of resume stands out for a particular studio. You have so many resources these days, like Glassdoor, you have Quora, you have LinkedIn. You can talk to people directly. You can ask questions directly. So there's no limitations of not being able to find anything out. You can find everything specific to a studio you are interested in on Quora or Glassdoor. Networking helps. Go online, network with people, make connections, talk to them about what you're working on, or talk to them about what you would be interested in working on. And that way you will network, and whenever you do something, share it online so that people in your network can see it, and that way you get recognized. Again, networking can be done through LinkedIn and Quora. And conferences, they help you in networking a lot. So you are here, make connections, talk to people. I've been to multiple conferences. I've been to GDC, Oculus Connect, CPPCon, and every time you go, these conferences are a lot more about networking than they are about the talk itself. Obviously, you are here for the talk, but trust me, you want to network, because you can listen to these talks afterwards as well, but the connections you make here cannot happen afterwards. So remember that. I'm pretty sure it's different virtually, but whenever this is all over and you get to go to actual conference, remember that part. And last, what to expect from an interview after you land one. So again, I'm not talking about any particular studio or any particular interview in general, because every studio has their own way of interviewing and it differs a lot depending on the type of games they work on or type of engines they use. So there's no one way to answer this question. This will have so many answers, but I'll try to generalize some of the common stuff which can help you study better for your interview or prepare better. So I talked about this already. Data structures and algorithms, very common. You have to know you have to know this like all the way. And this will definitely come in your interview no matter where you interview. And math. So math is important and is asked in a lot of game interviews, especially if you are interviewing for a gameplay programmer. Math is pretty common. You will be asked, linear algebra. You might be asked to solve stuff right there on paper, and that's why I mentioned before that math should be studied pretty well. Physics again is really important when you're interviewing game as a gameplay programmer. Physics is gonna be part of your interview, so study physics. And yeah, there's not much to go into details about what into physics, because that again would depend on the studio, what kind of games they work on, and depending on that, you will have to find out what kind of math and physics would be useful. But they will definitely be asking you these questions. System design, very important, gets asked a lot. That's why I mentioned game engine is very important, because you will have these questions over and over. You will get system design questions even in tech industries. So this is not just games, but in games it goes more into details about engine architecture. So that's why engine architecture is more important. And low-level programming. So I think I have not talked a lot about this, but as a programmer in a AAA industry, you are expected to know programming in low level. You're not always writing visual scripts. You're not always interacting with the gameplay scripts. You're interacting with engine. You're interacting with memory managers. There are times that you have to jump into disassembly and you have to figure out all of that. And that's why low level programming is very important. I have been in interviews where I was asked assembly level questions. So, that might sound bizarre, but it happened. And they even explained me why it's important, because, when you are working on these systems, especially when it comes to consoles like PS4, Xbox, PS5, XPSX, they have a very specific architecture that you need to understand, very specific architecture that you have to deal with. And if you do not understand assembly, some of these problems related to optimizations and memory management can be really difficult to tackle. So that's why low-level programming is very important. I think I was asked this question a few weeks ago in one of my talks with Rahul, that if I was to go back and do everything all over again, what would I do differently? And my answer was low-level programming. I would concentrate so much more on low-level programming than I did in all those time in my college, because in AAA, it's going to come in very handy. But yeah, so after that, memory management, I talked about this before. It is very important. You will get asked questions on memory management in your interviews. It's going to be part of your day-to-day programming job, because memory, again, is very important for games. And I think I did not mention this, but I have it here. Optimization. So you will be asked about this. You will be asked about times where you had to optimize something or how you would optimize stuff. even if you have not worked as a professional game developer, even if you are straight out of college, you will get asked questions like, tell me about times you had to optimize something and how did you handle it. It's very important because optimization goes a long way. I mentioned games have limited number of frames, so you can only do so much of calculations in the time you are allotted. So uh, you have 60 frames per second. Each frame needs to be calculated, and you have such a limited amount of time, especially when it comes to AI. You don't get enough time in every frame because physics gets to do more stuff than AI. So you have to be really careful about the type of calculations you are doing, and that's why optimization is important, and you will be asked about optimization if you are trying to enter into AAA game industry. And yeah, that's all I have. uh, Thanks a lot for uh, listening. I'll open the floor for questions. Let's see. uh, so
Can
I'm
you hear
gonna
me?
go to the CV.
So I've looked at some. Can you hear me, guys?
Yeah. Yep.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Anshul? Okay, awesome. So I have some questions that I've picked out here. So it's gonna be kind of difficult for you. So the first good one is, what was the turning point of a career? And I'm guessing it means that what was the one thing that got you in, that broke you in? So see if you can answer that.
I think that's a hard one. There was no like one single point. You have to constantly work on it. You have to constantly be learning. You have to constantly be focusing on what's important. Um, yeah, I can't think of one single turning point, honestly. Yeah.
Cool. There's another good one, and it's a very relevant question. What should a Unity game developer be doing if he or she wants to shift towards game dev using CPP? And what is the approach that they should be looking into? This is asked by Sumant.
Yep. So, I see the question. So first of all, if basically like there's no such thing as a Unity game developer. You are a game developer. Unity is the engine you are using. So no such thing as Unity game developer. Uh, Even when you are using Unity, you are learning about how to program. You are learning about how to write mechanics. So that's gonna translate in the same way in any other language. Uh, Shifting towards C++ from Unity is a little hard if you picked up Unity, because Unity uses C Sharp, which is a very high level language, but also Unity uses its own version of C Sharp, which is even higher language than actual C Sharp, and C++ is actually a low level language. So if you're planning to shift, you have to get out of that mindset. You have to uh, actually forget Unity and start from the basics of C++. And if you think that you're going to get to making a game with C++ in 7 days like you did with Unity, that's not going to happen. You're going to be learning C++ for at least 6 months to a year, and then you will have some basic knowledge of C++ to start your game development. Now, if you were to use Unreal, that would be a different story because they use C++, and that's a little different than just starting from scratch. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, that was a great answer. So another few good. I'm looking at some nice relevant ones because there are people are like spamming the
Yeah.
same question again and again, and that doesn't really help. Dude, he's not going to tell you what kind of project he's currently working on. So stop asking that. Okay. Do you think you can get a job as a fresher in one of the big companies if you have worked on a small game project?
Yeah, I mean, Of course, you're not going to be working on a big game project. Like all your game projects in your college or even as a fresher are going to be small. So, the size of game project does not matter. What matters is that you are able to take something and complete, like get it from start to finish. That shows a lot. And if there's a completed game, it does stand out in your resume. So,
And yeah, and I mean, the one thing I'd like to kind of contribute is not just your participation in the project. You have to be able to explain what you did. You have to be able to deconstruct it. It doesn't matter if you're a god level programmer, if you can't explain what you did and how you did it and what your procedure was, it's no use. So you have to be able to kind of explain your participation in that project also.
yep.
Excellent. So another interesting one: does a CV matter as much as your first game for the interview in studio? So I guess like if you have a CV, so I guess I can paraphrase the question saying that should I work on getting an impressive CV or should I concentrate on making a good game or both or
I
what's next?
mean, if you make a good game and you do enough on that, it automatically gets you a good CV. So I'm not sure how can you have a good CV without having a game project. Uh, I mean, how to structure a CV is totally a different thing, but if you have a good game project, you will have a good CV. So, you know, like the CV is how you're gonna show your game project. No game studio is gonna actually go and play your game. Like no one has that kind of time. They're gonna look at the CV and then figure out what you did. So the CV does matter.
Okay, cool. Also, there's another one which is, I think you've already answered it, but I'll ask it again. Do you need hardcore math or mid-level math will do for becoming a game programmer?
So that the actually depends on what you want to do as a game programmer. Because I mentioned this a lot. There's so much in game programming. If you want to be AI programmer, you will be using basic math, not a lot of a high level math. But if you want to be a physics programmer, you will be using a lot of high level math. And if you just want to be a gameplay programmer, it will be a between those somewhere. And yeah, but I mean math is important. Like it will be required and it will help you. So there's no reason to skimp on math when it comes to game development.
Excellent. There's another good one saying, what reference should we take for problem solving related stuff? Related stuff. So I guess he's trying to ask for like if you have a problem, like where do you find solutions to your programming, etc. problem? I think he's asking you.
The that's Google, I guess. Like that's where you find problems to your solution. If it's not,
Google
yeah,
Uncle.
like if you don't find it on Google, it's a new problem. Find a solution and post it on Google. Be the first one, but yeah, there's no like the books are not gonna give you a solution to a problem you are having. Like if you're specifically asking about debugging something.
Right. Another good one. As I noticed, you did your post graduation abroad. How did you get into a game college abroad?
Well, I had some experience of with game industry. I interned at EA, so that helped me. And basically,
In Hyderabad, so just to clarify, Anshul had an internship at EA Hyderabad, and then he moved to Digipen. So he already had an internship at EA Hyderabad before he went to Digipen. Yeah. So there's another one. How much does your team help you when you get into the industry? I mean, if you don't know a few things, how much does your team help you?
they will have. I mean, I mean, that really depends on what kind of team you have. Not every team is gonna be the same, but if I just talk about my team, they helped me a lot. My team was extraordinary. I was probably the person who knew the least about programming in my team. My team had programmers who were already software engineer in Microsoft. One of them was at Amazon while I was at Digipen, and they were learning game development. So I was just like working alongside them, and they helped me learn so much because they were already working as professional and I was not. So your team can take you a long way. It just depends on your team.
All right. I think we have time for a few more. Um, if anyone is doing BCA and learning C++ and graphics programming online, can you get a job in one of the big companies like EA Activision?
Yes, you can. It's so again. I never talked about the degree you should be getting. No one is really gonna care about that. I focused on what you should be learning, and that's what people care about. So yes, you can get job in big companies if you are learning C++ and graphics programming online. No matter what degree you are getting, that no one is gonna say that, oh, you do not have a BS or BTech, so we are not going to give you a job. Not going to happen.
Okay, cool. I think
How to learn engine designing? Uh, that's books. Get the books. I've answered this multiple times, but there's this book called Game Engine Architecture by Jason Gregory, and it's one of the best books about game engine. If you can use that book and make a good engine, that's all it is. I think that's one book is all you need. Like it explains everything you will ever need to know about game engine architecture.
awesome, awesome. I think we're kind of coming up on time now. We started about 10, 12 minutes late, so we're kind of 12, 12 minutes up. So I think, I think that's it. Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you so much, Anshul. That was fantastic. And this time I did remember to record the talk. So we are actually going to have this talk up for a bit. Let me see. I have a little bit of trivia which I want to show the guys. Um, it's my uh, it's my picture with Anshul at backstage pass. This is 12 years ago. That's me. I don't have the beard and whatnot. And that right there, this is 8 years ago. And that right there, if you can see in the front row, the most Entu cutlet sitting right in front of me, uh, that over there is Anshul. And this is like pretty. Also, I have a podcast with him, which was kind of like his origin story. It was about how he got into making games, his childhood. That was like the origin story, and this was the superhero story. So if you guys want, you can have a look at that podcast. This is my I don't know if you can see. This is my it's Up Your Game of Mentor. It's there on my Instagram. So do go and check it out. Right. Thank you so much, Anshul, for joining us, and thank you everybody.